Hey, what's good, everybody? Welcome to another live session with the Hype Magazine. I'm your editor-in-chief, Jerry Dobie, and today, I've got a journalistic hero on the line with me by the name of Touré. He is a master of prose, words. He's interviewed everybody, the cat, uncle, and dog that has any fame or worth to us as Blackness. He's a multiple author, amazing, amazing author, an amazing writer.
Thank
And he's
you.
got a new show on the Byron Allen Network, theGrio, called Masters of the Game, where he will be um, interviewing elite people, athletes, starting off with athletes anyway, um, and finding out how they master their craft, their road to success, and basically what it means to be brilliant and great at what you do. Thanks for being with us, Torre.
Thank you for having me.
You're amazing. It's an amazing honor. Look, you know, people talk about other journalistic heroes like Langston Hughes and um, others, but we don't get a chance to talk to people who, held it down and reigned on like MSNBC, and they wear the uniform um, that some of us do. And so it's really an honor to talk to you. I would like to start off by with an introspective by asking you from the inside looking out, how would you describe Touré?
How would I describe Touré?
Yes, sir.
Uh, I'm a father and a husband. I'm a person who lives in Brooklyn. I'm a person who really enjoys writing and figuring out words and order of words. And, I like the process of sort of, figuring out, what is this sentence going to look like? I love Black culture and Black people and talking about, what's going on in Black culture. I'm deeply concerned about the direction of the country, but I feel like critiquing the country is deeply American and necessary and essential. And sometimes when we critique the country, people say, well, it's the best country in the world, or why don't you just leave it if you don't like it so much? And that doesn't make any sense because being an American is about critiquing the country and saying the country could be even better. When people say, well, why don't you, America is the best country in the world. Why don't you go somewhere else? I think about it's not really important or valid whether or not America is better than another country. And there, by many metrics, America is better than many other countries. And by many metrics, it is absolutely not better than other countries. But the point is America better than it could be, than it has been, than it will be? You can only compare America to itself. Um, but I'm also a person who thinks a lot about the science and the nature of interviews and how to talk to people and interplay with people and make them feel seen and make them get them to talk about things on a deeper level or things they had not talked about before. Um, and there's a lot of sort of science that goes into that, but that's part of what I've been doing for a long time. At other places and on my podcast. And so to have a chance to do that for theGrio was what is incredibly exciting. And the sort of people that we are getting for Masters of the Game are extraordinary folks who sort of help us see the beauty and brilliance of being Black, as well as the 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 road that they've taken and how they've taken it. And some of how you described it, their brilliance, their journey, their craft, and talking about those things, I think will hopefully help the audience in their own journey to mastery, to brilliance, either for themselves or advice and wisdom they can pass on to other people.
Mm. I think it's a beautiful thing that we expose more and more of our people who wear our uniform and get the inside scoop, from masters of the game, such as yourself, as a journalist, getting all the juice from the meat, so to speak. And I've watched some of your interviews, and you have some brilliant levels and nuances that you use. And I'm studying you. I'm old, but I'm studying you, and I admire what you do. And
I mean,
thank
I appreciate that. I think that we absolutely have to be able and willing to learn from people younger than us. I definitely have learned a lot from millennials. So, I think, some of the older people were like, I'm older, I know everything, you don't know anything. And, I feel like growing up, well, having the way the millennial generation has presented itself, it's been a lot of like, oh, I can definitely learn from them, borrow from them, like, watch how they move. But, when I do an interview, I want you to feel really deeply heard. I want to deeply listen to you. I want it to be a conversation, where I'm like really listening to you, and I'm not just waiting to ask the next question, but I'm sort of like deeply engaged with what you're saying and trying to get at, your brilliant, where does that come from? How does that exercise? How do you see the world, especially as it relates to your craft, so that we can start to envision that sort of mindset operating in our own heads?
Okay. I'd like to know, what was the defining moment for you that brought you into the world of journalism and media?
Well, that really takes you back to college. I was part of the Black Student Alliance, the BSA. I think I was a sophomore at Emory University when this happened. There was a small thing that happened that matters so much in college that is super not important outside of college, but it mattered immensely to us. We arranged to have a party at a space that was a diner that was, like 100 feet away from some dorms, but not connected to those dorms. Um, you had to like sign a contract which talk about decibel levels for the music and how long the party would last and how many people would come. So all these sort of elements were deeply prescripted. And then like 30 to 60 minutes before the party was scheduled to end, the campus police came and said, we're getting noise complaints and you have to shut it down early. And, we were an extremely politicized and politically aware group of people, people who loved and lived the BSA lifestyle at that moment at Emory, who really saw like a Black party as a really important political gesture, because we don't think we used the term self-care, but we understood the nature of self-care, Black joy, Black communion as important restorative practices to help us get back to the work of being students and protesting racism when it happened on our campus. So it wasn't just like, you killed our party, but like, a Black party was really important to us. And I think that sort of fits for all of us, that Black joy is critical to Black survival, and it is a political gesture because Black self-care is critical, right? It's a critical fluid that helps us keep going. So 20 of us wrote letters to the school paper, the Emory Wheel. And we thought, okay, we're going to write letters about what happened and how we feel silenced on this campus and, some of the problems that the Black students were going through. And we thought, okay, we've written 20 letters. They'll have to publish, like most of these letters, we'll take over the letter section, and that way we'll get our voice out. Now, what they did was they noticed pretty much all these letters are from the same sort of community of people, and they're all pretty much making the same point. So they kind of boiled it down to one letter with 20 signatures, which in retrospect was not necessarily the wrong thing to do journalistically. However, we as students, juniors and sophomores mostly, did not see it that way, and we felt silenced. So, out of our grievance in feeling silenced there, I said, I'm going to start a newspaper on this campus. I named it The Fire this time. It was all editorials, mostly by me, but definitely like everybody on, all the Black people on campus were welcome to write, but most of them were like college students. They're like, I don't have time to write an editorial. So I wrote a bunch of them, but it was very Black nationalist and revolutionary minded. And I talked about things that are going on in Atlanta and on Emory's campus, and then as well our ideas about what was going on in the nation. And so I was drawn to this media gesture, which I ended up spending more time on than my classwork, as a way to speak back to the community, as a way to speak back to the silencing that we had felt, as a way to give our thoughts and concerns and our ideas and opinions a voice. And I really enjoyed that interplay, and it was very natural for me to sort of like experience events or to learn about events either on campus or in the country, and to write something about them that would then summarize them in an interesting way. And so this sort of became my sort of entry into media. But, I mean, like ultimately media is about storytelling, and, you know, something happened, and media's job is to talk about what happened and what that means and put it in context. And I remember being a child of 6, 7, 8 years old. If we went somewhere as a group of kids, or, I remember going to birthday parties or whatever, and you come back, and my parents or other parents are like, what happened? How was it? And I noticed from a very young age, I was always way better than the other kids at explaining and describing and putting into context. This is what happened when we went, to the camp, the roller coaster, the party, whatever. And to be able to do it not from an egocentric point of view, not from here's what I experienced, but here's what the group experienced. And here's what most people who were there would say that fits with my understanding, my perception of what happened. So that sort of media gesture was in me very early. I mean, I can also remember, you're taking me back. I can also remember my father was an accountant, a CPA, in the Boston area. And he owned his firm, but it was relatively small. There were only like 2 or 3 other accountants who worked with worked with him. But, like most of the Black people in the Boston area in the 70s and 80s would say that he was their accountant. So we walk around and they all sort of know him. But if you know accountants, from around mid-January to around May, he was really busy, and we really didn't see him that much. We saw him in the morning, and then he was gone till after bedtime for a kid. And I remember like being in the car with him as a really young person, 4 or 5, and thinking about, these moments with him are precious because he's not around all the time during tax season. So thinking, what can I say to him, and what topic can I bring up with him that will be of interest to him? And I think for kids, the way they talk is very egocentric. Here's what happened to me. Here's what I care about. And I was already thinking, externally, what can I say that this other person will be interested in? And so that I can create a conversation with them. And I sometimes think that is also sort of the beginning of my media journey, because the media people are always you're always thinking about the audience. How can I get the audience's attention? How can I properly serve the audience? How can I feed what they want to talk about, what they need to know? So I feel like those moments just started to shape me in this direction, and just pointed out to me my sort of natural fluency in this sort of media gesture.
Mm. Beautiful. I think in there you answered my next question would be
All your questions. That's the end
your
of the interview. Thank you very much. Thank you.
no. I was going to ask you about your why. Why you do what you
Well,
do.
that's an interesting point too. I mean, I think about presenting Black people in the full complexity and humanity that they have. And I think a lot of the media that I saw, especially doing my early days in music journalism, there was a way that the white writers were otherizing these Black rappers in the late 80s and early 90s when I was first coming in. And, you know, talking about them almost as if they were aliens who had dropped down from another planet with an album. They clearly have their whole own style, but we're kind of scared of it and we don't really know where it comes from. And from the beginning, I was like, no, those are my brothers and sisters. Like, and I completely understand where they're coming from, and they're not alien at all. They're completely American and deeply human and deeply complex. And I wanted to write about them at first, rappers, because that was the first real space that I had in media, in a complex human way that saw them as important, deep, real people who were not, being otherized by my pen.
Hmm.
And that sort of notion of wanting to show the complexity and brilliance of Black people has pervaded my media experience.
Okay. Do you have or do you recall one of your most satisfying written pieces and what it was about?
Wow. That's an interesting question. I mean, I think it's hard to nail it down, but I think about the first book I did about Prince felt really good. I Would Die for You, where we talk about Prince as an icon within America and why he became an icon. And, I mean, I remember sort of searching for what it is about Generation X that relates us to Prince and sort of diving down into what generations are about. It's not really that important that, the boomers are born between 1946 and 1964 and that Generation X is born between 1965 and 81 or 82. What's important is what they call psychographics. Something happened in that period of time that has a massive impact on the generation and then shapes the experience of that generation. So for the boomers, it is the largest generation in American history. So the world in every aspect of America had to expand to welcome in this gigantic number of children and then young adults and then older Americans. So you see this constant expansion of America to deal with, we were used to, let's say 100 new students every year, and suddenly there's 1,000. So the world had to massively change. And also within that, the struggles for, Black liberation and civil rights, women's right, the sexual revolution. So all those sort of things are shaping and right. And for millennials, you immediately see, the impact of growing up as digital natives, as internet natives, as opposed to Gen Xers who had to learn it quite often like a little bit later, relatively later in our adulthood. Um, but also sort of the impact of 9/11, of the economic crash, which changed the world. So there, but I was struggling to find what is the key event that binds Generation X until I finally realized that for Generation X, the divorce rate for our parents was much higher than it is for people who are boomers or people who are millennials. And also, you had a large number of women going into the workforce, partly because they were divorced, partly because the workforce was more welcoming to women. So there's multiple ways there that a lot of Gen Xers had a lot more free time than the previous generation or the generation after us, either because our parents were divorced or our parents were both going to work. So this leads to a lot of the things that shapes Generation X. More free time leads to more sexual activity earlier, more drinking and drug use earlier, more suicidal behavior at an earlier age, and just also more time to ourselves to build that sort of internal life and learn what it is to just be alone and to take care of yourself. All these things are sort of shaping Generation X. And when you have someone like Prince coming along, talking about sex, talking about loneliness, the ultimate latchkey child who his parents get divorced, but then he leaves his family home to go live with somebody else when he is a young person. All of this we are feeling and seeing, and this is a large part of why he's an important part of our cultural map.
Mm. You know, you're given a master class in how to do an interview. You've turned it from an interview, in my opinion, into a conversation, and
Sure.
I'm totally honored
But
by
this is
that.
part of the notion of doing a great interview, which we see a lot on Masters of the Game. It's a dance. It's an interplay. We have to do it together. And, I do a lot of work of, creating a vibe and a relationship with the guests. So, we had Debbie Allen on the show, Tyler Perry, Keenan Thompson from SNL, Frances Tiafoe, the great tennis player. And I want to spend time before the interview starts just chatting with them, just building a rapport, just getting them used to me and digging me. Like we're talking, we're buds. So by the time we start the interview, we've already been talking for 5 or 10 minutes. So we're building rapport. And then you're in the interview with these folks and you're talking about their brilliance and their genius, and which is very complimentary. People love to talk about how successful they are, how smart they are, but to do it in a way that becomes of service to others. So it's not just you saying I'm so great, but it's you sort of unlocking some of your keys to success so that others can go, oh wow. Like that's really interesting. That's maybe something that I can take for me or something I can give to others. Um, Master of the Game has been sort of like the ultimate thing that I would want to do in media, to sort of like have these great conversations with Black people for a Black audience so that we're speaking the same language and we're sharing wisdom that that the audience can use for themselves.
Amazing. I would, we're on the clock and I apologize, but I would like to know if I could interest you in coming back and let's having a longer conversation. I would like to address, um, outside of this magnificent show, but I would just like to address with Touré his insights on media, the evolution thereof, especially within Black media, and how in this age of babies raising babies, perhaps some of those outlooks and things that we were raised up with in our various generations are maybe not making it into black and white like they should and being reinforced. Would you do that with?
Well, yeah, the one thing that comes to mind immediately is, when we were first rising in media, there were far fewer spaces to exist in, on television and in print. And those spaces tended to have finite space there is only so many pages in the magazine. There is only so many hours on the network dial, right? And there's only so many minutes in the show.
Right.
Now we, and that also led to a small number of gatekeepers being able to sort of constrain what we talked about and how we talked about it and who got to talk about it. Now, there's an immense number of places where we can go to disseminate and get news and information. A lot of those are internet sources or streaming sources where we can make it as long as we want it to be, as long as it needs to be. And, we can have this television show be longer if we need it to be. And, part of we didn't, we grew up with BET, but that was performing a certain service, I think. And with theGrio, you are talking to a really smart, engaged Black audience, which is so empowering and inspiring as a media person, because it's like we know what we care about. We are speaking the same language. I am doing a series of breakdowns of the episodes of Atlanta, and you know, you watch Atlanta, you write about it for Black people, and like I don't have to like explain everything, like
Yeah.
we know what we're talking about, and to be able to use the shorthand to get to deeper points because I don't have to explain this because I know I'm talking to a Black audience and a griot audience is really, really powerful. So to have these masters of the game conversations with our folks who we idolize, Debbie Allen, Tyler Perry, and to be able to talk about them in front of Black people is really, really powerful. And as you started to say earlier, it's not just athletes, of course. This is a broad-based show. We have entertainers, business people, poets, all sorts of writers, all sorts of people are going to be part of this show. So it's going to be all sorts of wisdom and knowledge that we're going to be trying to spread and disseminate to the community.
I appreciate you. I apologize that I must move on. I don't want to. I really want to stay here with you and spend time. And I would like to invite you back. The amazing Touré, journalist extraordinaire, and someone that I hope to speak with again if you'll allow me. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Jerry. Nice talking to you.
Pleasure.
Okay.